to all this live streaming, so I'm trying my best. Still getting the hang of it. Perfect now. Okay. Good, good, good. Well, then get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, or to it if this is the first time you are seeing my face. Thank you for clicking on it. My name is Jacy, and I have OSDD, and that is a mental disorder that basically combines chronic dissociation disorder as well as having multiple personalities or multiple parts, as I like to say. So I think I've been talking a lot about this because it's been my whole life lately, and I have so much more to share with you guys. And I have been receiving so many messages about how helpful sharing this stuff is. So I am going to share with you guys today some crazy parts work that I did this week that was, I don't know, might be pretty helpful. And that was healing Soccer Jacy. So essentially, I have been getting so many nightmares about sports. So I don't know if you guys get any type of like weird sports nightmares. I get sports nightmares as well as serving nightmares from back in the day. But lately, I've been getting so many soccer nightmares where I am forgetting my cleats and my dad's mad at me, or I get put in the goalie. So I was a goalie. I'll go into this, and I get a bunch of goals scored on me, and I have a bunch of anxiety, and I'm disappointed. And it's so weird because I wake up with so much anxiety when I get these like stress dreams, essentially. And they were getting so bad, these soccer dreams specifically, that I'm like, what is going on? And so I took it to therapy. And it's funny because my therapist has always said, like, track your dreams because it's probably your parts trying to talk to you because I've always struggled with it. And this was one of those things that I was like, oh, it's a part talking to me? Interesting. So it turns out I had to do parts work with. So I thought what I wanted to do today was go over some of the fun sports that I've played throughout my life because I was a big sports. Tell you any little tidbits along the way and share with you some of the crazy parts work that I ended up doing with Soccer Jacy and how I kind of healed her through my OS. So if you're watching this on YouTube, this is subscribers only mode, so subscribe if you want to chit chat with me. I'm also watching a TikTok over here and trying to read comments. Can I turn off the brightness on this? Because, oh, that's so much better. I'm sitting here trying to be like, I can't read. Hi, TikTok. Thanks for joining us. But ADW The Beat says that they've also struggled with sports streams for nearly 2 decades now. Well, this might be helpful for you because maybe it is one of your parts trying to communicate with you. Because just because I have an OSDD system, all of this type of therapy work can apply to anybody. But here are some of the crazy sports that I have played growing up. So the first sport I was ever put into was cheerleading. And it was because my sister did cheerleading first, and I just did everything that my sister did. And what's funny about this era is I don't remember any of it. I don't have any stories to share. What I can tell you is I'm showing a video or I'm showing a photo over here on YouTube. And this was shortly after I broke my collarbone, and you can kind of see that it's a little broken because that right arm can't go all the way up. But I have no memories of cheerleading when I was a cheerleader. I know that I got to wear red lipstick, and I remember that being a highlight because that was like the first time I got to wear makeup. But for the most part, cheering, it was just because my sister did it. And we marched in a parade, and I think we learned a silly dance. I liked the pom-poms, but I never stuck with it long enough to get any strength benefits or become a cool tumbler. I will say I think cheerleading does not get enough credit for how difficult it is as an actual sport. Cheerleaders have some of the most insane core strength, the most insane strength ever that I wouldn't have stuck around for much longer because I have the upper body strength of a Muppet. So that checks out. So first one that I did was cheering, and this was about, I think I was like maybe 4 years old at this point. And the next sport that I did was soccer. Now, we'll come back to this, but with soccer, I started soccer at this age, 4 maybe. And again, it was because my sister did it. My sister's 2 years older, so kind of just followed everything. And I remember at this age specifically is when I started ASO or AYSO, the Youth Sports League. And I was immediately good at soccer. I kind of took to it like a duck to water, and I played on the field. And I remember when I first started, my mom would give me $1 for every goal that I scored. And I was like, "Oh, sick. I'm gonna make some money." And then I was, like, good enough that I started scoring goals, and she's like, "Oh, okay, maybe we're not gonna pay you for every single dollar, like, just go out there and have fun, kid." So I was pretty good at soccer, but I still wanted to try other sports. Multifaceted, I wanted to try other things. So the next sport that I did ADW did football. I never I guess I never did football, I guess I couldn't have but soccer was my main sport, but I also tried gymnastics. So gymnastics I also don't remember this era. I actually found this photo recently when I was going through scrapbooks at my mom's house of just all the different scrapbooks, and I was like, "What the frick frack? I did gymnastics? I do not remember this." That leotard vibe is kind of a vibe, but I think it's so funny that I even attempted gymnastics considering I am so inflexible right now that I am in therapy for it. It is, I guess, trauma related, so what can you do? But I have the mobility of an old that's what my physical therapist has told me. So the fact that I once could have been a gymnast, been Simone Biles, again, they're way too strong though. I don't think I could have been a gymnast. So tricky in that sense. Hey Sam, how are you doing? You were a soccer player too. We have some soccer players in the chat. Tell me what sports you guys played. I want to know what sports you guys played growing up because as you'll see here, I kind of tried them all. And I feel like with sports, you kind of have to try them all to see like what you're vibing with, what you're good at, what's sticking. But I feel like soccer is common because it's a team sport and you can have a lot of people on the field. I feel like it's harder with gymnastics because you have to be very disciplined in order to be self-serving. And I don't know, when you're on your own team like that, it's interesting. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever played an in sport. I'm gonna tell you guys more sports. I've only ever played team sports, and probably because I wasn't good enough to be on my own for anything, but I tried. So Sam did soccer, baseball, and football. So softball was the one sport that I didn't do that I would have loved to have done. I was great at kickball in elementary school because I was a soccer player and, I had a good foot. I wish I would have done softball in there somewhere, but kind of interesting in that sense. But after gymnastics, Aaron did 3 years of figure skating. That's pretty cool. I feel like I live in California. I don't even know where I could find an ice rink to even participate figure skating. So I don't know where you're from, Aaron, but that's pretty cool. Figure skaters also have the best uniforms. I would have loved to have been in sparkles and skirts. I guess I've rollerbladed and I'm not too great at that. So figure skating probably would have been out of my wheel. That's a fun one. That's a cool fun fact. When you do like 2 truths and a lie, make that one of yours. But needless to say, gymnastics, I didn't remember it. I must have not liked it that much, which checks out. But the funny one that I did is track. So I did track. This was about like the 5th, 6th grade. And it says, this is from my mom's scrapbook. So I got first place in the relay. And I remember very specifically, I guess it's important to know, if you guys haven't seen any of my videos, I grew up with asthma and a lot of breathing problems. So it's actually hilarious that I was on the track team and that I made it. But I think just because I was naturally athletic, just one of those kids that was like better at sports than art, I guess, I made the track team, but I didn't make any individual events. So even though I'm like, I've never done an individual sport, I still, even in track, did a team event. So I was on the relay and I remember I was either second or third, definitely not the anchor and definitely not the start. And I remember like, I was that person on our relay team, like, you better not lose this for us. See, like, you're kind of the weak link on this relay team. You better not lose this for us. Clearly, I didn't, because that is a first place medal there. But I have to tell you the long jump story because it's my favorite story in the history of the world when it comes to my dad. Hey, JMC, good to see you over here on TikTok. But first, so ADW did soccer, was my first love, and then I moved from Carlson to a small town soccer team. So I feel like that's a hard part when your sports are very regional. Like, I've never even considered that lacrosse would be a high school sport because I didn't even hear about it till college. Or I know there's people out here in California who did rowing, and people in the Midwest are like, where are we gonna go? Where are we gonna go practice rowing? We don't live by the Great Lakes, so regional does make a difference, I guess, when it comes to your sports. Oh, Aaron, you're in Australia. That's right. Yeah, I guess Australia would have ice rinks. I don't know why I'm like, where would there be an ice rink? But that checks out. But the long jump story is that I don't know why I got picked for the long jump. I think I was just assigned it. I wasn't good at jumping. And the jumping thing's gonna come in handy later. So remember this. I guess it's actually not gonna be that important. So you get two chances when it comes to a long jump in a track meet. I go and I do my first jump, and it was abysmal. It was literally like, why did you get picked for this event? Why are you here? So that somebody else can win? Because it's really not going to be. And I was so disappointed in my first jump. And you go back to like the bleachers. So I go back to the bleachers and I sit with my dad, and I gotta jump farther. And I was like, oh, jump farther. So I go for my second turn and the stars aligned. I jumped as far as humanly possible and I got second place. And it was the funniest thing because my dad was just like, oh my God, my advice worked. Jump farther. And I did jump farther long enough to get second place in the long jump as a fourth grader. But alas, that was the end of my track career in that case. So, hey, Zach, thanks for joining. I'm talking about all the sports that I used to play and how I healed Soccer Jacy. So I'm over here on YouTube. My best friend Zach just joined, so I'm talking to him over here. So anyway, after track, and I guess that long jump was the only individual sport that I ever did in my entire life, which is kind of interesting. Tried that out, and then of course I went back to soccer. But this is important because when I went back to soccer, I became goalie. And like I mentioned, I have asthma, and I as as soccer started getting competitive, I couldn't run as fast as everyone else, didn't have the endurance, didn't have the lungs for it. So they put me in the back of the goal. What I did have was quick reflexes, and they were like, "Oh shoot, you're actually a pretty good goalie. Guess what? You're the goalie now." I never ever chose to be a goalie, but from this age, which is like about like 8 years old forward, I was a goalkeeper, which is it's funny when people talk about soccer, people forget that there's a goal. I tell them that. They're like, oh, so you were a goalie for soccer. That's different than being a soccer player. And I'm like, first of all, rude. Go to all the same practices and rude, okay? Don't be Melanin, thank you. My That's So Raven shirt, I just got it from Five Below. And I said, I love That's So Raven. I have to get it. And I'm wearing it today because it's representing this era of JC that I'll be talking about. So, hey, Josh, thanks for joining in. So it's also funny though with being like going back to soccer and being a goalie is that it became a well-known fact that I still couldn't jump. I don't know why. I have like a 2-inch vertical and I'm only 5'4". And even though I grew, like I was still growing in that sense, I wasn't very tall and I wasn't a good jumper. So like, why was I the goalie? It was those reflexes, baby. So it checked out. Now, what's important about this era of soccer is I was terrific at soccer at this age. Because when you're a goalie, if you just make one save when you're like an 8-year-old kid, the crowd goes wild. And, all the parents are cheering on, like, you saved the day. And I really started getting attached to the idea of like the praise, the acknowledgement, and the fact that when it came time for that one pressure moment, like I could handle if a couple goals get scored on me, it's like, you know what? It's okay. It happens. You're a goalie type of thing. But I really did love this era. JMC says 5'4". You always assumed I was 5'8". I have gotten that so often, you guys. I have met people in real life and they tell me, you're shorter than I thought you would be. I said, I don't know how to take that information. I also make fun of my short dad a lot on social media. My dad's only 5'2". That's where I get it from. But thank you for saying that I give tall girl energy. I appreciate it. What is going on with my bangs? My they're not even. Ignore that. So at this age of soccer, I loved it because I loved the praise. I was good at my position, and it also just wasn't super competitive at this age either. But I was also good enough to start getting onto club teams, start getting on select teams. It actually goes ASO, then select, then club. A little I had that happen with some classmates who initially only knew on Zoom. That's another thing too. When like the whole COVID era happened. Hey Glenn, thanks for joining. Seeing people on Zoom only and then meeting them in person is very jarring because it's like, whoa, you give a different vibe off in your little screen the life. Kind of interesting. Um, but anyway, after this soccer era, I stuck with soccer for several years. Then when I got to middle school, they have more options and they have sports for you to try that I hadn't tried before. So the next one that I got to try was basketball. Now, basketball, it's so interesting in middle school sports because it's less of like the organized club sports. And it's kind of like they understand a lot of people are there to like, they want to try it out. But you kind of have to go in with a little bit of knowledge because they expect you to have been playing for the first 12 years. That it's like, all right, who can make a basketball team? Basketball. Again, at this age, I was kind of naturally athletic and I made the team, but I didn't know basketball at all. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know zone defense. I didn't understand anything. And I remember my coach hated me because I didn't know how to actually play the game. I could shoot the ball. So like I was actually really good at three-pointers. I would kind of just throw it up in the air. That was what my whole thing. But I very specifically remember this is another funny sports story here. It was 7th grade and they put me on the court when they just need like a bunch of points, because I was good at three-pointer. Anytime we get the ball, I was just gonna toss it up and hope it would go in for. There was one time I go for a three, and I get fouled, and so they're like, "Oh, like you have to go shoot free throws," and I was like, "Shit, I suck at free throws." Like I was really bad. Okay, so I go for the first free throw, airball, totally airball it, and I was like, "Nah, what can you do?" Like my whatever it was with the three-pointers, it was only functioned and set to that distance right then and there. Anything else couldn't do. So I go for my second free throw and I miss. I didn't airball, but I completely miss. And I go, oopsies, shack. So I start walking away. I walk away, and then the ref blows his whistle and he's like, come back. And I was like, why? And he goes, you have three. I was like, no, you only do two. And he's like, no, you get three. And so I was so confused. Like, why do I get three? I've never done three free throws. The third free throw, and I airballed it as well. And I was like, this humiliating. Why did they make me do this? And I had to ask my coach. I was like, why did I have to do three? I mean, they fouled you. And I was like, oh, no one ever told me that. Like, I don't want to do it threes anymore because I don't want to get fouled anymore. So basketball is one of those that I was okay at, but I didn't have the knowledge behind it to really get any like playing time or to really dive in and enjoy it. Um, what I will say on a more serious note that's kind of interesting is when I joined the basketball team and when I became this age, so this is the age of puberty, and I could do a whole nother parts video on this specific part of JC. Actually, I've talked about it in my Shadow Brains. This is middle school. This was kind of the first time being surrounded by a large group of Black girls, being on the basketball team. And it was where I first started getting kind of like pushed away for not being Black enough. And there were two other white girls on the team, and then the rest were all Black girls. And I remember this was kind of the beginning of understand my place within all of these ethnicities and kind of like the pecking order of it all. And I remember remember getting excited, like, oh my God, like, not thinking like, oh, I'm with Black girls, but them being like, oh my God, you're so white, like, you're not half Black, sort of. And so I remember this was a very, very big era of starting to become more aware of my ethnicity, starting to feel like I was an outsider because of it. And even though I was in a community where I'm like, wow, like I'm finally surrounded by a lot of Black people, I was getting pushed away for it. Now, again, we're middle schoolers and people are mean and people are silly in that. But I very specifically remember that with basketball. And I do think that that was kind of. ADW says, wow, they stuck me at goalie in the middle of the game. Never played the position and I hated it. I was central and attacking midfielder originally. Although I never gave up a goal, hated it. Which means you were a good goalie in that case. But yeah, most people don't enjoy being a goalie. And I remember when they put me back in the goal, it's kind of an insult where it feels like, what, I'm the worst person on the field, that's why you're putting me. And then when you're good and they're just like, well, that's your position now, it feels rude. But I will say, because I hated running so much, I was like, this is okay. Actually, I can get behind this. So after basketball was volleyball. So volleyball, I loved volleyball, but same exact thing. I made the team because I was just good at sports. And I was surrounded by girls who had been playing the equivalent of like club and select soccer, but for volleyball. They were on travel team. They'd been playing their whole lives. And I again was that person on the team being like, huh? Like, what did I do? We have to rotate. And like I did a foot fault. Like I was learning the rules as I went. And so I was a nightmare for my coach because I just didn't understand how to play the game. So it's almost like I was the one holding my team back. Now, mind you, there were other girls that were also the same. They were still kind of learning it. But I will say with volleyball, my biggest memory from volleyball I have more parts healing work to do with this because she struggled a lot with her body image. 'Cause with volleyball, you wear these short shorts, and I remember there were so many girls on my team, and again, this is 8th grade at this point. This is when you like boys. This is when you start kissing boys and getting boyfriends or other things beyond that, and people were, like, dressing cute and wanting to show off their body. So there were girls who would roll their shorts as teeny tiny as they would go, and they would, like, roll everything as much skin as they could show, and I was very uncomfortable. I remember trying to yank down my shorts as much, and it's so sad to me that, like, that's what I remember about volleyball, being so uncomfortable. I don't even remember if I was good at volleyball. I don't remember if I enjoyed the sport. I just remember how much it affected my body image, and it's just so sad how that works in middle school, you're at the height of puberty, and you're worried about how you look. Um, I will say I was actually probably the best at volleyball outside of soccer, to the point where they were like, "Hey, if you wanna get into travel volleyball, you can do that." And I considered it, except it's the same season as soccer. Like, if I had done softball, I could have done softball and soccer because 'cause they're different, you know? Uh, but never continued volleyball after 7th and 8th grade, which is a shame because I actually really enjoyed it. But that's because I went back to soccer. Now here's where we're gonna start getting into some parts talk. Here's where we're gonna get into who we'll be talking about today when it comes to my OSDD, and that is Soccer Jacy. So now, moving into high school, this was actually still around the same time with middle school. So middle school sports happen while I'm still doing soccer. And with club soccer, that's where like you're good. You're paying to play, you're on a team. And because there's so few goalies, so Melody says people want to be goalie. People actually don't. I feel like people don't want to be. Yeah, people get bored at being goalie. There's not a lot of action. It's a lot of standing. What's interesting though, and you bring up a good point being bored at goalie, I didn't know I had a dissociation. I had it at this age. I didn't know. Being a goalie was terrific because I got to dissociate and I got to zone out and put my brain on autopilot. And then when the ball would start coming, it'd be like, oh shoot, time to play. So I thrived at being a goalie without even realize one. I thrived because I couldn't breathe, couldn't run, jump, which wasn't great, but I was also dissociating. So it's funny that you say getting bored. But with club soccer, I made the teams where it's like I was getting picked, like you audition. It's like I was trying out, I was making good. And the way club soccer works, there's different levels. So I started off on a bronze team. It goes bronze, silver, silver elite, gold, and premier. Start off on bronze. So I made the bronze club team. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And because there's just not that many goalies, like when you consider soccer, you got 22 people on your roster. You only have 2 of those people as goalies. So I was one of the best goalies in town solely by numbers. So I was doing okay. And I liked it because, again, during this time, any save that you make, you're getting cheated for. The one time you have to participate in the game, it's either you lose the game or you're saving your team. So I liked this era of Soccer Jacy. And what's also funny, I brought up earlier about my sister. So my sister and I actually played for the same club. So we both played for Arsenal, which was the biggest club in town. So it was kind of, when I say I was a good soccer player, I was on a good team, you guys. We were pretty good. And I basically just did everything myself. So she was on Arsenal, I was on. But I bring her up because my sister and I kind of did 2 different pathways when it came to our. She was one of those people where she was on a premier team. That is the highest level you can get. That is like you are going to college and you are getting a scholarship. But she didn't get a lot of playing time. She was kind of, I don't want to say a bench rider. Sorry if you're watching this, Jamie, but like she was a sub. She was that person that got subbed in with 10 minutes left. So she didn't play a lot, but she was. And so with her team, my parents were all in because they were traveling the country for their games. They were getting scouts coming to their games and they were playing these elite players throughout the whole. The way I kind of did it was I was on a lesser team. So I only got up to gold. So I never made it all the way up to, but I played every single game, every single minute of every single game, and that was good enough. And it's interesting because I started noticing around this age that I didn't want to work as hard anymore to be good. So things started slowing down. Hey, Dee, love you too. Thanks for joining in. So after trying so many sports and being just naturally good at them, it's like I would participate in a sport I didn't for. I didn't even know you could take 3 free throws, but I'd still be good at the sport, and then I'd get praised if I was doing well. All of a sudden, by sticking with soccer, going competitive, and staying with the team, people catch up to you, and you have to, like, work hard in order to get better. Didn't like that part of the process. I didn't like having to do my practices twice a week, plus an extra goal, plus an extra practice. Didn't like that part of it, and I also didn't like how because the game was getting more competitive and it became about winning tournaments and trying to go up a level in like trying to go from gold to premier. Everything became so much more competitive that I was no longer getting praised for just making that save. I was now getting criticized and I was getting yelled at. And it was new for me because I thrive so much on the acknowledgement that all of a sudden I started internalizing, like, uh oh, I'm doing something wrong and I don't like it. Now, what's it's also hard too because so one of the nightmares that I've been getting with LAJC, not LAJC, with Soccer JC is this idea that I would always forget my cleats or I'd always forget my glove. I'm sure anybody who's played sports can relate to that, where you go to your soccer game, you arrive at the field, you check your bag, and you're like, uh-oh, Dad, I forgot my cleats. Dad's angry, and you drive home, go pick them up, and that would happen not often, but that happened enough times to like traumatize in the way of how much I upset my father, how disappointed. And it happened. I remember one time it happened, and I actually had to buy goalie gloves at the tournament because we were so far away that like I couldn't just go home and get my goalie gloves. But I remember this era also became the era where like it felt like my parents were getting mad at me. Now, they weren't actually mad at me, but as a kid, you just start internalizing that and thinking like, "Oh, this is the first time I'm in trouble. Like I'm a good kid, but now I'm in trouble. I don't like this feeling of trouble." Okay, so I cannot forget my goalie gloves. Then the game happens, and I, maybe get a few goals scored on me. And before it'd be like, dang, I tried my best, but I still had fun. It now became my coach starts yelling at me. And my coach goes, JC, like, you needed to do this, this, and this. JC, you lost the game for us. And so my brain goes, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in danger. I'm not safe. And it starts putting me into that flight or fight. And I started hating that aspect of it. Not only that, if I don't now make that one save, now you only get one chance to make that save in that soccer game. If I don't make that save, it now becomes, JC, you lost the game for us, for the whole team. Now the whole team lost the tournament. The whole team can't go from goal to winner. Now the whole and I just start internalizing that where I go, uh-oh, I have to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, my dad's mad at me, my coach is mad at me, my teammates are mad at me. I have to be perfect, otherwise I fail. And in therapy, a big thing is about safety and dying, that two my parts in my OSDD system, if they don't fulfill their role, they die. That's just the nature of how my system works. So Soccer JC here starts developing this understanding that her role at this time was to win, to be perfect, or she died. Problem was that I didn't want to put in the work to be perfect. I didn't want to do the conditioning in order to be a better soccer player. So naturally, goals would get scored on me. Naturally, we start losing. And what also started happening during this time is I started noticing my parents coming to my they were going to my sister's games a lot more because, hey, she's on the better team. She's traveling the country and they have to go with her. She is also getting potentially scouted by college. At this point in high school, I also was very aware I'm not going to college for soccer. I can get into a way better college with my academics. I had a 4.5 GPA. I'm not going to the Midwest to play soccer when I could get a scholarship from my grades alone. I still wanted to play soccer, but it just became less competitive and less of a drive for me to be good at it. So because of that, my parents, they didn't come to every single game. Because of that, they were sending me with the other family, to drive to the tournament. And when some of I got to be like 16 or 17, now players could drive to and from practices and games. So I would just get sent with the other people. So again, my brain at this time starts understanding that I wasn't perfect at my game. And now I've lost my parents. That's how my brain was working. My brain understood it as because I stopped winning, because goals were getting scored on me, my parents stopped coming to me. Not the case. Done a lot of therapy since then, and big term we use therapy is you can have resentment and compassion for your parents. And I definitely do resent them. I've brought it up to them before. I said, hey, I think it's pretty fucked up. You guys stopped coming to my soccer game. I know I'm the middle child. I know that you had two other kids, but you stopped coming to my soccer games, and that kind of hurt my feelings. I couldn't express it at the time, and I don't know why it hurt my feelings so much. But yeah, I didn't like that. But at the same time, I have so much compassion of like, my parents were awesome. They put us in club sports. My sister and I were in two terrific soccer teams. My brother was a wrestler. They were running around like chickens with their head cut off trying to get us to all of our activities. Mind you, at this time was also when I was in National Honor Society. I was in choir. I was in newspaper. Like I had so many things going on that it's like, yeah, I can forgive them for not making it to every single soccer game. But I have so much more understanding that that's where my brain was at this time. That's where Soccer Jacy started feeling I lost my parents' love because I wasn't perfect and I am now dying. So the crazy part in this whole journey, I'm remembering. So this was one of my last soccer tournaments. I'm about, I don't know how old you are when you're a junior. I was 15 years old because I was kind of on the young side in school. And I remember we won this tournament, and I remember thinking like, I think I want to quit soccer. Like I don't even want to do it my senior year. I just want to spend my senior year doing all the other activities that I like. At this point, it was choir, it was National Honor Society, all those other things. And I was like, I'm not going to go to college for soccer. So I kind of just want to. And it killed me inside. All I kept thinking was, how am I going to tell my parents that I want to? And it's so interesting now knowing what I know about OSDD, because that Soccer Jacy knew she was about to die, knew that by quitting, she was going to die because she may lose the love of her parents, but because she also was given a role and a role in the system, sports. And I remember I probably played soccer a year longer than I wanted to because I was only so scared of telling my parents I didn't know how to quit. I was so scared of it. And I'll never forget, I was sitting on the couch, and after this tournament, like, I was like, oh, like you won the tournament. I said, yeah, I think it's my last one. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, I don't think I want to play soccer anymore. And she said, wow, I didn't realize I raised a quitter. And that was the last I remember. And that was the last I remember because I know now that Soccer Jacy died in that moment. And that was her telling me she didn't love me. Not what she was saying. Again, I can have compassion and resentment. I don't think that was the reaction she had. But I also think she was surprised and taken aback because it was unexpected. I didn't show any inklings that I was going to quit. But in that moment, Soccer Jacy died because it confirmed that I disappointed my parents and that I was no longer needed in the system. And that's difficult because what ended up happening is with my OSDD system, when the part dies, it gets stuck in time, but it remains in my brain. So it's kind of like when I create a new part, okay, I'm aware that I played soccer all those years, like, of course, all that, but I don't remember the fun time. I don't remember the individual games where I was a hero, where I did save the day. I remember the trauma parts of it. It's the trauma that I had was making my dad mad when I forgot my was having a goal scored on me and my coach yells at me, I'm in trouble. Was losing a game and now my whole team never wants to talk to me again. That stays with that part. But that part gets pushed into the back of my head for years and years because I don't talk to them. I don't realize they're there. So the way they communicate with me is through dreams and through nightmares. And so for my whole life, I've always gotten so many nightmares every single night. And I've always had sleeping issues. I'll do a video on it someday of all the sleep issues. I went to so many doctors for my sleep, find out, oh, it's mental illness? Dang. But I didn't know that it's because my parts are trying to communicate with me through my dream. So I would always get soccer dreams. serving dreams. I would get old relationship. So with the soccer dreams lately, they've been coming up so often. One, because I've been healing a lot of, and I've been quieting a lot of those parts for a more restful sleep. But something recently must have triggered Soccer Jacy, and I think it's being around my family. You know, they bring up certain triggers where it's just like, uh-oh, dad's mad at me. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Those feelings I get as a kid. So I don't feel those in real time, but the little part in my brain does in the back, and she's holding on to that, and she's still stuck in flight or fight. So she's panicking because she's in trouble. She's checking to make sure she brought her cleats, that no goals are getting scored on her. And so how she gets rid of that is through the nightmare of constantly getting scored of showing that fear. And I didn't realize that that's what's happening. So recently, when I've just been getting these influx of soccer dreams, I forget all the time that I have OSDD. It's the nature of this. And I'm just like, why am I getting those? Like, gosh, that's right. It's one of my parts. All right, I guess I got to do part. So I had to heal Soccer Jacy and heal that inner child, that athlete that had so much pressure to perform. So the way that I do parts work is I kind of have a system here. Excuse me. Mind you, I've been doing a lot of therapy for this. I've kind of gotten the hang of it and I know the process now, but I've gotten to a point too where my parts just talk back to me. Once they reveal themselves, it becomes a two-way conversation and it's effortless. So first step is I have to ask that part, tell me your story. Like, tell me what your version of events is. That's Jacy telling me about anxiety. But then I ask them, well, like, what parts did you enjoy? What are some of the fun parts? And it's kind of like memories start coming back. And it's kind of like I start thinking about things I locked away years ago. And it's like, oh, you know what? Remember that one time where I drop kicked it so far that I scored a goal? That was crazy. It didn't count because somebody has to touch it before that happens. But that was so cool. And I'd be like, yeah, I forgot about that. That is really cool. What else? Oh, you remember that one tournament where I got to go to Texas for a game? Got to tour like the University of Texas and players came out and gave autographs. That was super cool. And I'm like, I forgot I've been to Texas. I forgot that happened. That was super cool. And so you create this dialogue with this part where you're kind of just like sharing memories and sharing kind of the opposite of their trauma, like the anti-trauma, essentially. So then the next step, after kind of like chit-chatting about that, you ask the part, what do you think your role in this is? And Soccer Jacy essentially said, my role is to be competitive and to not lose and to perfect. And I said, well, what are you afraid will happen if you're not perfect? And she said, Dad will be mad at me, my coach will be mad at me, my team will be mad at me. And it's starting to click for me of I'm struggling in real time dealing with being a people pleaser. And that is from across all of my parts. That's from my whole life. Every single part's a people pleaser. So hearing it come through in the scope of sports, I thought was really interesting. So she's telling me like, if she loses the game, she loses her family's love. They will stop coming to and she'll die. That's nature of how it works. And it's always hard to hear a younger part of yourself say that. And so what you have to do next is reassure them that that's not the case. And it's kind of like when I'm talking to a part that is now 15 years younger than me, I have to tell them, parents aren't going to stop loving you. Like, it sounds silly to me, but that's what she's feeling. But it's like, oh my God, mom and dad, they have to go to Jamie's soccer games, to Chad's wrestling matches, to Jamie's yearbook function, to my brother, like everything going on. It's like, they're not gonna love you. They got really busy, you know? But also, like, you stop caring about soccer a little bit, but that's okay too. But they don't hate you for it. And also, your coach, he's not mad at you, he's coaching you. Like, kind of the whole point of this, right? So you just have to almost reparent them and assure them you're not gonna lose any love just because you lost the game. And nobody's mad at you. Nobody's mad at you. Everyone's just competitive. That's the nature of these sports. And the next step in all of these parts work is kind of after establishing that, you introduce yourself. And this is the step that I always forget. So I just filmed a new video that's coming out this weekend on YouTube that's doing some pretty heavy lifting parts work. And it kind of goes over this, but I always forget to introduce myself. That's like one of the most important steps. So when I introduce myself, I basically have to go, I'm you from the future. Hello, not a villain. Thanks for joining. And so when I say, when I have to tell them like I'm you from the future, it's almost like I have to tell them about, the trauma that we've been through, which is really hard telling the young parts that, but then also telling them that they're part of a system and then kind of revealing the rest of my parts is always really weird because some parts is overwhelming. For some parts, they're relieved. This part in particular, she was much more of like, oh my God, a team. We're on a team again. Uh-oh, don't be mad at me. But like, we're on a team. And I had to tell her, no, we're all on the same, and we're not going to give up on you. We're not going to be at you. And so letting her know who I am is a big step because it gets them to trust you and to understand that their role in the system isn't necessarily. And so then it's kind of like in my brain, all the other parts come in. They're like, hey, we don't need you to be overly competitive, to feel like you need to be perfect. We just want you to have fun and play sports. Remember how you just tried every sport and you just liked to play and get outside and move your body? That was fun enough, right? So then the final step in parts work is you give them a new role. And the new role that I had to give Jacy, I'll actually tell you about in a second because I have a couple comments. Ooh, pause, climax. Couple comments. So first one over here on TikTok, Not a Villain says, I saw your manic video and it's hard. I have a ton of mental problems. Yeah, so I have a ton of mental problems too, not a villain. So in terms of the mania, I was misdiagnosed with having bipolar disorder because it presented as what I would learn I have now, which is OSDD. It's a form of having chronic dissociation and having multiple personalities. So what I'm describing here is essentially multiple personality. But I have a pretty advanced system. I'm pretty self-aware, and I can explain it in a way that I feel like hopefully doesn't make me sound crazy. But I can relate to having a lot of mental problems and feeling how debilitating. But the biggest step in healing from a lot of mental health issues is the awareness of knowing that you have them and that there are ways to get better. So I can definitely relate to. Sam says, you think that because you are healing mentally and emotionally, it is causing those memories to manifest? Absolutely. So I have been getting more soccer nightmares because I'm healing other parts. So I would have 2 nightmares every single night. I always thought it was a quirk. I always thought I was silly and creative and that my brain just off. It didn't. And it's because that's how my system communicates. It's at nighttime. And so I would have soccer nightmares all the time, but they're jumbled in along all these other 20 recurring nightmares. So the fact that I've healed so many different parts, I'm now more observant of when those other ones keep coming. So I don't think that they're coming up more. I think I'm just more aware of how often, if that makes sense. But it's also the nature of healing, where because I'm regulating my nervous system, parts are feeling safer to come about. And so that's been the hardest part about this healing journey is that it can get over, because how I would describe it when I first went into my trauma center was I went in and I said, I have voices in my head screaming. They're screaming at me and I don't know how to turn them off because they all just found out that they can grab the microphone. I'm finding out that I have all these multiple parts, and now that they know I can hear them, they're all shouting at once and I don't know how to do it. And so I had to work through how to even communicate with my parts, how to tell them, hey, we'll get back to you this part right now. And so I have definitely seen that the more that I heal, the more disappointed I get that, like, oh my God, this is going to be a long process because more and more parts come up. More and more parts are like, oh my God, you can hear us now? Okay, my turn. Let me tell you my grievances. Because let's be real, healing from soccer trauma isn't the craziest thing in the world. It's not like, oh, I've had crazier things happen and I've had parts that I'm still working on that have deeper trauma than that. Trauma's trauma. And that pain is still that pain that got trapped in my brain. And the whole nature of this healing process is taking back the pain from the parts that got stuck in my brain. That is my mental discipline. And so it's definitely more parts are coming up because they're safer too and they're feeling. And I just have to stay in charge and be the one to say, okay, let me talk to you now. Let me handle this. Let me do. I will say as a little teaser, tomorrow, wait, no, not tomorrow. This weekend, or I should say, I filmed a video yesterday. It's kind of interesting. Check. I'll give you a little teaser. I recently had a part that took over my life for a month, and I didn't know it was happening. And it was the first time that I learned that my parts could take over that way. And I've had a crazy month because I fell into a depression again. I fell into not being able to make a single piece of not being able, and I felt like I was regressing in so much of my healing journey and in the process. And then at the very end of the month, it was like, oh, a part took over and I was co-fronting, and I didn't realize that that was what was happening. So that's going to be the next video. It's pretty crazy. And it also goes into the fact that I will definitely be talking a lot more about parts moving forward. I've been so scared to talk about a lot of these mental topics, mainly because I feel like all the people that have followed me in the past, it's for my curly hair. It's about being mixed, about my silly jokes. And I've gotten comments of like, are you only going to talk about, are you going to make this your whole personality? And I internalize that and I get like sad and I'm like, what's the point then? And I've gotten to a point where I'm like, oh my God, do you guys hear this whole video that I've been talking about? How crazy this sounds? That there are multiple parts in my brain that I have to talk to and segment. I think that's worth sharing. And that's kind of what I want to share moving forward. And so, suffice to say, after that diatribe, that parts definitely can take over. Parts can definitely scream in my dreams, my everyday life. And it's up to me to sort through them and see how I go about doing the parts where I back that. So what I did with Soccer Jacy was I had to give her a new role. And I basically said, what were the parts that you liked about soccer? And I had this other memory come up of, I think some of the best times I enjoyed soccer was, get this, you guys, this is going to be a fun little tidbit, was when I played in a Spanish speaking men's soccer league. So, this is so random. So when I worked at the Cheesecake Factory, and so this isn't the same part. This is a different part. But this part kind of came in and started sharing this. But when I worked at the Cheesecake Factory, I was, I think, 20 years old. I was in college. And they had this Cheesecake Factory soccer tournament. And we played against all the other Cheesecake Factories. And somebody found out I was a goal. Oh, that's what it was. I tried playing on the field for that soccer tournament. Like, we need a goalie. And same thing we've been talking about, ADW, was I was like, fine, I'll be the. So I go and I am the goalie. And then I was pretty good. Like, they were like, oh shoot, like you are a goalie. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, hey. So we play like the cooks at my Cheesecake Factory who are playing in this Cheesecake Factory tournament. They're like, we're in a league and we need a goalie. Do you want to be on our soccer team? And I was like, am I allowed? And they're like, actually, we'll have to find out, because there weren't any girls in the league. It was a men's Spanish soccer league. And so I was like, if I'm allowed to, like, yeah, I'm down to play every Saturday in a soccer league. Like, I haven't played in a while. And so I joined this men's league, and it was so funny because straight up there was like very few English speakers. I knew my cooks. And we could communicate in a way. And there were some people that, like, they were totally English. And so I played in this league and I was very okay. See, there's a boy. There's a boy in this photo to show that it was a men's league. But what's so funny is that when I asked Soccer Jacy, like, what were some of the best parts about soccer that you liked? This version, I don't know which part this is. She spoke up and she was like, I think I enjoyed best playing in this men's soccer team. And the reason was that this team was awful. Let me go back to this photo. I can't really see in this photo. My cooks at the Cheesecake Factory, they were like heavy dudes, and they were doing this, go out for exercise. They were doing it because they were probably soccer players back in their youth, and they just loved the sport and want to play. It was a decently competitive league, but we were at the very bottom of the charts. We were not winning games. I played in this league for 2 years. I could count on two hands how many goals our team even scored. And the fact that I also wasn't that great, and mind you, boys kick hard. They kick really hard. So being a goalie in a men's league was actually pretty difficult. We were losing games like 3-4 nothing, you know? But it became that same feeling of when I would make a save, I would get praise. And they would go, "Hey, like nice save." And the reason is because they didn't have any other option. They had been looking for a goalie. And the older that you get, everybody that age demographic, they all want to play on the field. They all want to relive their glory days playing soccer and get back into the swing of things. Nobody wants to get thrown into being goalie. And so everybody who plays goalie is usually stuck there because they so I was the first willing goalie, and I was, like, decent enough that, like, hey, instead of it being 6-0, it's only 4-0, you know? And it's like, to them, that was good enough. And it got back to being that feeling of, "Oh my gosh, like, I just like playing." And I didn't realize how much fun it was playing in this league when there was no pressure. I knew we weren't going to win, but it was so much more fun playing knowing that there weren't those stakes. And so it was like this part was telling Jacy that, and then Soccer Jacy goes, "That's the part I like too. I just like the times when I could just play soccer and I was good at it, when my mom would give me $1, when my coach would give me a high five, when my team huddles around me, when I make the winning save." But then it's also like, I just like being outside and exercising and being competitive, but not overtly perfectionist if I lose. And just in doing that little parts conversation, it's like I didn't even need to give Soccer Jason a role. I just needed to remind her of the times where soccer could just be fun without it being about being perfect and worrying about losing. And so the role that we created for her was, you're the one who likes to try new things, it seems like. One who likes to just move your body and exercise in that sense. Why don't you help us with that? Right now, I am going through it with my body. I have fibromyalgia. I am currently in physical therapy, somatic therapy, and myofascial therapy, the whole thing. And it's difficult because I had to go from running a half marathon, exercising all the time, being this athlete that I have presented to you guys, to now being told, you can't exercise, you work on just accessing your mind in a way that is so much slower than you're used to, that feels like you're failing, and you just need to be okay with that. And I wasn't okay with it for a long time. I was getting frustrated. I was getting mad at my body that it feels like I have a brain injury that I can't function. So I tell Soccer Jacy, can you help me with that? Can you help me discover the joy in just learning how to use my body again and getting praise for just the little accomplishment? She said, I could work with that. I could work with that. This week at physical therapy, I'm kind of working on a few things, but we started getting started on my knees. I have a lot of pain, and so I'm doing like, again, I ran a half marathon last year. I don't know how. My therapists are like, "How did you even?" Like, my guy, you're telling me. And I had to do simple me just like bending my knee, not even a lunge. I had to put my foot on a table and just forward and try to gain that mobility, gain that access to my. And it's frustrating because it's like my brain can't connect to my knee. But if Soccer Jacy hops in and she goes, "Whoa, whoa, we can feel our knee here. Okay, that's kind of cool. Let's do 2 more. Okay, we're doing it. We're doing it." And my physical therapist is like, "Nice, you've made some progress." It was so much more. It was one of those times in physical therapy that I'm like out of myself, and I'm also taking joy in the little process. Because again, if what I haven't shown you is, if I'm not immediately good at something, I don't enjoy that. Now all of a sudden I'm enjoying the little pieces of the process in terms of just moving. And that's where Soccer Jacy has started to help. And because of that, I have gotten fewer soccer nights. I don't feel like my parents don't love me. But I'm also healing my body with, and that already been instrumental in healing both. So that is the story of how I was able to heal the inner athlete inside of me that died a long time ago, fear of not being, and how I was able to redirect her and to help me of my other body issues today. I will say with this whole OSDD process, it is ongoing process. It is tough out here, you guys. But you guys just hopping into these lives, you guys sending me messages, you guys commenting on my videos, it really does help remind me that like I'm not oversharing on the internet. I am doing a lot of heavy lifting in my brain and I'm sharing probably more than I need to, but I feel like this helps other people out there. You guys can take any pieces of information and apply it to whatever you need. You don't need to have an OSDD system. I know ADW, you're saying that you were an athlete and you still get some sports dream. Try talking to that inner child in you that's talking to you through your dreams and ask them, why are you getting nightmares? And how can I help? You don't need to feel that way anymore. And you can focus on all the times that you won. I did want to show you guys two things. So what's also interesting is, thank you, Maggie. I appreciate that. She says, hey, JC, hang in there. Hope you're getting enough rest. Gotta sleep. East Coast. Oh, your party already left. Bye, Maggie. But thank you for being here. But one of the interesting things about learning recently that I have OSDD is just how obvious I've had it for forever without even realizing it. And you could see it in my fashion choices and my apartment decor. I've always been a very sentimental. I've always considered myself quite a hoarder. I save a lot of, and I always felt like, well, because they're my things, I don't want to get rid of them. And growing up, I'd be like, why can't I declutter any of these things? But it's because I still had these parts in my brain that they were their things. So I've kept so many things, and I'm so happy I did now knowing that I have this system. But it's so funny seeing this because I'm like, oh my God, I had parts all along. So the first thing was I always saved my soccer pins. So we're going to talk about Soccer Jacy. I always saved my soccer pins. And last year I made, oh no. I made this soccer pin jacket. I thrifted varsity looking jacket and I put all my soccer pins on here. And I've worn it out and people are like, I like your jacket. And I'll be like, thanks. They were on my old soccer pins. Like I was a soccer player. And it's so funny how like sentimental it is to me. But now I realize like, oh, these are JC's like trophies. This is the part that she was proud of that I forgot all about. And it's one of my favorite jackets now because it's so deeply personal, but also one of those things of I didn't realize how important it was to my part until I was able to put it on display in a jacket. And the other thing is, oh, get over here. I also saved all of my medals, all of my soccer medals. And they were sitting in a box at my parents' house for years and years. And I couldn't get rid of them. And I was like, why would I throw away medals? But like, what else can I? So sometime last year, I was like, I want to display my soccer medal. Mind you, I'm a 31-year-old woman living alone. Why would I feel the need to do anything with my old soccer medals from 20 years ago? But it was this compulsion that I had to display them. It felt like my trophies. And so I made, this one's heavier. I made this like little collage of all of my soccer medals. And I hung this up. So this is on display in my bathroom. And I look at it every morning and I look at all my soccer trophies and I feel a little proud of myself. And I think it's so interesting because I didn't realize throughout my home decor that it's become a little museum of my accomplishments, my favorite things, my hobbies, my old joys. And it makes so much more sense now going, this was Soccer Jacy doing this. This was Soccer Jacy trying to be proud of herself and trying not to be shut away in the system. And so now after bringing her to light and doing that inner parts work with her, I look at my jacket and my medals and I go, I'm so glad not only that I didn't get rid of you, but that subconsciously I've been displaying you this whole time because I'm proud of you. I feel like you felt like didn't love you, your coach didn't love you, but I love you. I don't know, I just think it's really cool to discover about my system, and the more obvious it becomes, the more I'm like, this has been such a beautiful process, learning who I was from almost an outside perspective. That makes sense. So a part of this healing process It's called integration. I don't know if I'll ever get integrated because I think the idea behind integration is understanding that all that stuff happened to me. It still feels very much of like, oh, that happened to an old version of me, but like not me, it's the other person in my brain. So I don't know if I'll ever get fully integrated, but I think I'm okay with that because I'm okay with being proud of Soccer Jacy from this third person perspective. So kind of, I don't know, kind of interesting. See here, you guys have Cam says, you know, you have a community and a support group on your channel that loves you and will always have your back. I appreciate that, you guys. Let's see. Shiki Sai Maki. Call you Maki. Tell my brain. It says, as someone who suspects having OSDD, I highly appreciate you sharing. Okay, good. I'm glad. I relate to you on so many things. Very similar personality to me. You must be fun and beautiful. Just kidding. And it makes me feel validated to see someone like that. See, that's I appreciate that. That makes me feel like I'm not just oversharing for no reason. ADW says, wow, this live video has been very enlightening and thought-provoking. Now I understand a lot of what I experienced in my youth and how it transferred over into my adulthood. Exactly. This happens to everybody. My parts just get stuck in time. But it's like, am I a people pleaser because I worried about my coach yelling at me and that stuck with me throughout life? Absolutely. So definitely worth checking into some of your own. Pretty dang sure I have CPTSD and with dissociation and some sort of fragmentation. And it's a spectrum. It's absolutely a spectrum. I met some qualifications for DID, but not all of them, which is why it's OSDD. Definitely a spectrum, and all of it is still valid. Even if you have one or two parts, even if you dissociate a little, it all exists on the spectrum. And if it's something that you feel like you can heal from or need to heal from, then more power to you. That's so cool. You made a display of your medals. So creative. They're so neat. Yeah. I also just like the little creative projects here and there. But yeah, definitely very insightful learning about this disorder and then taking a look around my apartment and go, oh, that's why I hung up all this stuff. They're all my parts feeling represented. Got it. So there will be more videos in the future, definitely talking about parts work. I feel like I'm able to explain it in a way that makes sense that I feel like I need to share it with. So you guys are down to join me on this journey and learn more about some of my healing process. But stay tuned for that video that's coming out this week. I also, if you guys are on YouTube or Instagram, and actually starting this week on TikTok, I've actually been streaming my talk show through my own direct channel. So I have a talk show. It's mainly fashion and lifestyle. So maybe not for the boys unless you want to hop in and hear more about some of that stuff. But I have my own talk show and I've been putting so much work into it. Every week gets better and better. And the cool thing is that I can simultaneously stream it from our actual talk show platforms into my own as well. So if you see me going live this Sunday at about 11 a.m., hop in because I can see all of the comments from all of the platforms. And I really like it. And I would appreciate you guys hopping in and saying hi because I love seeing you. There are very few people who talk about OSDD on YouTube, especially people whose are older versions of themselves. And that's what I think I have. So make sure to check out my next video because that's exactly what I talk about. So teaser for my next video, like I said, I work on a part that took over this past month and I didn't even realize because it all felt so familiar and it felt like things I would do. And it's because it's an old part. But the parts work that I had to do with this part was difficult because she is the oldest in age. So not like the longest existing, but the oldest. She was a lot more defiant and she was harder to work with. It was the most difficult parts work I've had to do because it wasn't. I had to be like, no, your dad loves you. It was trickier. So make sure to check out that video. And but I thank you guys so much for joining me. I will be trying to go live every Wednesday. I haven't been able to as much this past month because a part took over. More on that later. But I will see you guys in the next video, in the next live stream, in the comments of whatever. But I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you all soon. Toodles! And TikTok over here. Thanks, TikTok. Bye, TikTok. Love you, TikTok.